Hi, my name is Garrett Hawkins. I'm a graduate student at Morningside College, and I'm also a special education teacher at Valley High School in West Des Moines, Iowa. The title of my presentation is The Effective Cooperative Learning and Math Proficiency Among High School Special Education Students. So the problem statement with this is the numbers that you see in front of you, where in 2015, 6% of United States high school seniors with disabilities were proficient in math. Also in 2015, 17.5% of people with disabilities were employed. Being a special education teacher, that really resonated home with me and, to be quite honest, surprised me with those numbers. So I really wanted to focus on something that would support my students and find an instructional strategy that would hopefully increase their math proficiency so they could be part of those small numbers that you see in front of you. Also, a prediction of successful adulthood for individuals with disabilities is determined by the quality of education received. So again, being able to find an instructional strategy through the research process that would make me a better teacher, therefore making my students better in math. So to piggyback off all that, like I said previously, I teach special education at Valley High School. Within our program, I teach our 3 math classes, sophomore, juniors, and seniors. So again, I just really wanted to focus on a research-based instructional strategy that would help increase our math proficiency with our special education students. And that also ties into one of our district goals actually, which is to increase math and reading proficiency for all of our students in the district. I was looking for something with a social skills component to it. I think that's a very important piece for the educational experience for students with special needs. Also, our district focuses a lot on transition, preparing students for life after high school, whether that be a post-secondary academic setting or for the workforce. So really wanted to combine the academic piece with that social skills piece. The interventions you're going to see here are solely just math interventions used with students with disabilities. So this is not the cooperative learning piece, this is just straight math intervention here. One of them is something we're all familiar with and we've all probably used, computer-assisted learning or computer-assisted instruction. And it's what it just sounds like. It's using computers, technology to teach math or to use for instructional purposes for math. Whether it's done on an actual computer or a tablet, it's using that technology piece to assist in the instruction of math. The problem with that is if a student's spending their whole time on a computer or a tablet, they're losing out on that opportunity to enhance their social skills since it's an independent process of work. Another strategy that's been used before, a cognitive strategy instructions, that's when students are learning process of learning, whether it's how to organize, how to manage their time, how to break down assignments, chunk larger assignments. Problem that lies with that, not all students with special needs have those executive functioning skills to necessarily be able to accomplish those things, but it can prove effective for some students. Now we're going to shift over to actual cooperative learning interventions that have been done before with students with special needs. So these are specific examples and research that's been done and proven effective. So an effective instructional strategy for students with mild disabilities is cooperative learning. We know that through previous research, and one of those instructional strategies is team-assisted individualization. And this just is small groups grouped together by skill level where teachers can work with them in those smaller groups. So again, something we've done before or we've seen before, and it's just using those smaller groups to, whether it's to reteach or to give direct instruction to, but grouping students based on skill level. Another strategy that's been done before is cooperative homework teams, and that's allowing students to work in small groups or pairs to complete homework activities. So kind of shifting away from just the pure instructional standpoint, and now we're allowing students to work together, again, as partners or in small groups for assignments that are graded, whether it's a formative assessment, a summative assessment, or just a checking for understanding type situation. Students are now allowed to work together for something that's going to be graded for your purposes. Peer mediated instruction, again, something we've used before, we've seen before, and this is allowing students to correct peer work. It takes a little step further versus just checking answers for right or wrong. What peer mediated instruction does is allow students to provide feedback to their peers, whether it's constructive criticism, pointing out the errors, walking peers through where their mistakes came in or how to correct those mistakes. So it's using peers to give criticism and critique and an opportunity to reteach each other the material or the problem or two that they may have gotten wrong on that assessment. So the gap in the research that I found is those 5 or 6 lit reviews that I just went over with you were done with junior high age students and elementary age students. There's not a lot of research out there on high school age students. Another gap that I saw was that when these researchers are doing it, they don't necessarily define the current level of functioning for the students. They might just say X amount of students have ADHD or X amount of students have a math deficiency or a math disability, but they really don't define how discrepant they are from their peers. We don't know if they're 1 grade level below or 4 grade levels below their peers. So what I really wanted to do was to investigate whether or not collaborative learning may be effective for high school special education students. So taking the previous research and now shifting it towards a specific demographic, being high school age students, and really defining where students are starting in regards to their current level of performance, and through the research process where the collaborative learning could possibly take their math proficiency. So the impacts being, a research-based instructional strategy that proves effective in increasing math proficiency, number 1. So being able to help our students get better at math. And then number 2, incorporating that social skills piece in and tying it into transition. So being able to blend in a little bit of social skills and transition with the academic work. Trying to simulate what would be a workforce setting for students, being able to learn material and having to work with others while also being able to perform tasks individually. So what I did is I used a quasi-experimental design. I used 24 students from Valley High School that were in my classes. And out of those 24 students, they were going to be sophomores and juniors. You can see the demographics of the school there. We're a 10-12 building serving approximately 2,000 students, with 20% of those students being on reduced or free meals. So the 2 groups I picked, 13 sophomores, 11 juniors, each in separate classes. You can see the further breakdown of the demographics there. The sophomores being the control group, the juniors being the experimental group. So really the only difference in the 2 groups was that junior class, that experimental group, was going to be allowed collaborative time. So they'd get their direct instruction from the teacher, from the associate, and then during that period or during the week of class, they would be allowed to work in small groups or with peers, whereas that control group was just going to receive direct instruction from the teacher only. All their assignments, note-taking, anything like that was going to be done individually. And again, that experimental group was going to be exposed to that collaborative piece on assignments with some strict guidelines in place. Those strict guidelines being obviously no cheating, no giving of answers, only corrective feedback and asking for help or guidance. So the participants function between a 5th and a 6th grade level of math according to their individualized education plan. So that was that starting point. So all 24 participants were right around that 5th, 6th grade level for math. Each class met for 212 minutes per week. That's 3 44-minute periods and 1 80-minute class block period. We used the MBSP assessments, the Monitoring Basic Skills Progress Assessments, to collect student data, which do show validity and reliability according to the National Center on Intensive Intervention. So something that was reliable and legit to use for the purposes of this study. Chose the 5th grade level just because it would be consistent amongst the 2 groups, even though they fluctuated between a 5th and a 6th grade level, just looking for that consistency piece. Also, it had a consistent number of problems, 23 being the number of problems, where some of the other assessments would fluctuate given the probe. The skills assessed in those assessments, you can see numeration, money, measurement, geometry, charts and graphs, fractions and factors, decimals, applied computation, and word problems. So a variety of math topics being covered. Both groups took a total of 12 assessments between February and March of 2017. They were done with paper and pencil. They had a 7-minute time limit, and students could only use a calculator if it was indicated in their IEP. It's a 0 to 23 scoring range. Assessments were given weekly. The first 3 assessments were used to collect an initial baseline for each student using the mean score, and then we did the same thing with the last 3. The initial baseline mean scores were compared to the final baseline mean scores to show if there was improvement or not, and then the mean scores and standard deviations for the assessments were also calculated to help interpret the data. So here you can see the data. The students in the experimental group scored higher than students in the control group, although it wasn't very significant. You can see there was an increase. That control group stayed relatively the same. There's a slight increase, but for the most part, their numbers and their test scores were about the same. Again, that experimental group, they did show a little bit of improvement. However, the t-test did not suggest a significant difference between post-treatment and pre-treatment for the groups there. So here's a chart just showing the same information. There on the left is the control group, on the right side experimental group. Again, that control group you can see is about the same. It did get a little better, and that experimental group again showed an increase in their math scores over time, but just not significant enough to support the hypothesis. So with that said, we can say that cooperative learning probably has a positive impact on math proficiency scores. The previous research that we talked about earlier in the presentation showed that, along with this study. So whether it may not be significant, there was an increase. So we can say it probably does have an effect on math proficiency scores, and cooperative learning may be an effective instructional strategy to use. Again, nothing significant, but increases did show that it could be an effective instructional strategy. The limitations that we came across: the lack of background knowledge and skills of participants. Some participants function higher socially than others. They're all coming from different backgrounds, different experiences. So we have kids that focused on that were on a very high social skill level, and some that were low, and everything in between. So that was difficult to work through. Also, some participants had better background knowledge of math skill content, even though they were functioning around a 5th, 6th grade level. Some students were at a higher 5th grade level, some were at a lower 6th grade level. So even within those grade levels, still saw quite a discrepancy there. Which led to appropriate grouping. It made it difficult to group students by their skill level, whether it be social skills or the math skill itself, or both, just because even it was only 24 students, dealing with such a high degree of difference within those skills did make it difficult to group them, which could possibly have skewed the research a little bit, since we are dealing with students that are so different. The lack of time to teach the social skills, I think that was an important thing. Missing was just underestimating the lack of social skills for some of the students, and the time required to teach appropriate skills. Things just like being able to listen when somebody else is speaking, or how to critique somebody else's work, how to ask the right questions and not just seek answers, or how to give help versus giving answers. Just those little small social skills that were missing and needed more time to be taught to make this study a little bit more effective, I think. Sample size, again, only being 24 participants, but within that 24 participants, seeing a high degree of variability within the skill set. Being able to get more participants obviously could yield better results, more results, and then selecting students who function at a similar skill level in the content area if possible, just to help increase the validity of the research. So with the future research, I think pre-teaching the social skills and soft skills would be huge, just to closer align students in skill level, and hopefully create less discrepancies and create a more level playing field for better data and more accurate data. Also, group students who function at similar skill levels, again, whether that's socially and within the content area, could just yield those more positive results. Anything we can do to level the playing field and create more of a neutral baseline for students to really show if this instructional strategy of cooperative learning really is effective or not. Also, create time to teach the social skills. Again, whether it's a mini unit or a full unit, just letting students understand what the expectations are and how to work within a group and with a partner to get the most out of it and to make the experience as positive as possible and as efficient as possible.